You're watching the DSP Leaders Summit on the Cloud Native Telco. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content at TelecomTV. It's day one of this year's Cloud Native Telco Summit, and we are live on TelecomTV and also broadcasting to LinkedIn. Today's new content is now available to watch on demand here on TelecomTV and will be added to our Cloud Native channel on the website. Now though, it's your chance to get involved. For each of the 3 days of the summit, we'll be hosting a live Q&A program with some of our panelists and even a new guest or two. It's live, so anything can and probably will happen. There's a form on the website for you to use right now, and that will get your questions direct to us. We're surrounded by screens here. We're in constant connection with you. We'll see your questions come into us as soon as you send them. Now, I say us because I'm joined by my colleague Ray Maistre, who is Editorial Director here at TelecomTV. Good afternoon, Ray. Enjoying the day so far?
Absolutely. Thanks, Guy. Yep. And we're live. Anything can happen, as you said. We've had a great day already so far. We've had the interview with Kevin Schatzkamer from Google Cloud. And we've also had a really good panel on how telcos are building on their NFV investments as they move towards cloud native. And I know that topic is going to crop up during today's live Q&A. So, yep, so far so good.
Right, for the next 30 minutes or so, it's your opportunity to question our industry experts. So let's now introduce our guests, and I'm delighted to welcome back Misbah Mahmoodi, who is Senior Director of Product Marketing at VMware, who is joining us from Seattle. From Belfast, Ian Turkington, Vice President, Architecture and APIs at the TM Forum. And also joining us are, from Stockholm in Sweden, is Mattias Fridstrom, who is Chief Evangelist at Telia Carrier. From Madrid, Diego Lopez, Senior Technology Expert at Telefónica. And from Frankfurt in Germany, Nathan Rader, who is VP Cloudified Production at Deutsche Telekom. Welcome all of you. Thanks for taking part in our discussion today. To everyone watching, please keep sending in your questions. We're looking at them now. We'll get through as many as we can. But now, Ray, over to you for our first question.
Great, yes. And we're starting off today with a question for Nathan. So Nathan, how is Deutsche Telekom transforming its infrastructure to a new, more distributed and cloud-based architecture? Can you explain some of the key technology elements being used to achieve that?
Sure. So our transformation, we're calling our network differentiation. And of course, just like all the other telcos out there, we are looking to do more open source and go cloud native. So we are making the transition to containers, looking at Kubernetes, but also we're exploring areas around edge, around the hyperscaler ecosystem, and potentially other technologies that are still evolving. But we do see the main transformational component is going to be Kubernetes to go down our path towards cloud native, along with potentially some work that we're doing with exposing some of our network capabilities towards the outside world to make our network a little more smart.
Okay, excellent. And how far down the path are you with these developments? Are you still in the planning stage, test trial stage, or is there anything live in terms of cloud native methodologies, operations, adoption of Kubernetes?
Yeah, I think we're still in the early days, of course. I mean, if you look across the general vendor ecosystem, containers are still in the early phases, and we are in the early phases of trials and testing. But we do hope that improves rapidly as we kind of see this technology maturing quite a bit from our vendor ecosystem.
Okay. And maybe just actually at this point, can I ask Diego, does that mirror what's going on at Telefónica? Are you still in these kind of early stages, sort of finding out how the technologies and the processes and methodologies are going to work for you before you start introducing it into live operations and and the live network?
When it comes in general to virtualization, we have already started the journey, and there is a first version of our virtualized infrastructure already running and supporting several services. When it comes to becoming fully cloud native and addressing these aspects that Nathan was mentioning, yes, we are still evaluating technology solutions. We have made some field trials and we're advancing. So, as a summary, in virtualization, I would say we are half the way. And when it comes to become fully cloud native, yes, we are at the beginning stages.
Okay, excellent. So it sounds like everybody's making a move, but still at the early stages here. Okay, so Guy, I'm going to hand over to you now for the next question.
Okay, thanks, Ray. Well, this seems slightly unfair, but it's back to Diego for our second question. Diego, we've got a question in here, and it refers to the panel we had earlier today, and we're looking at the NFV to cloud native move. And we're seeing some skepticism over just how much NFV was designed with future-proofing in mind. Is it your understanding that the NFV plan always allowed for the eventual incorporation of cloud native technologies like containers, Kubernetes, etc.? Was it future-proofed, or is this something new that's changed?
Well, it's as future-proof as any software-oriented architecture. I mean, new paradigms, new languages, new ways of working with the software can appear for sure, and then you have to evolve. So what I would say is that in terms of precisely this evolution capability, NFV was there, and it was as future-proof as anything that is related to software and technology in these days. Having said that, something that is important, and I remember, and it's something that I repeat from time to time, there was one of the early presentations we made on NFV precisely made a comparison between what we call by that moment vertical virtualization, that was just taking a whole function like a PCRF or whatever in the mobile core and making it as a whole piece, a whole virtual machine, and what we called horizontal virtualization, that was dividing those functions in atomic functions that were freely combined to build the old functions. If you think about it, and I'm talking 2012 or something like that, before we heard about Kubernetes and all the like, and if you think about that resembles very much a Kubernetes environment, pods, etc. So I would say that just to conclude is that probably the whole architecture and the whole details are not completely future-proof, but in the concepts and in the foundations, there is this commitment for evolution that makes it future-proof. Yes.
Thanks very much for that, Diego, and especially like the explanation about the horizontal and vertical virtualization separation there.
If I can, just to give full credit, this is an original idea of a gentleman who's called Christos Kolias, that was in the and it's something that I have reused very, very often. So if he is listening or whatever, thanks, Christos. It was very good, a very good idea.
You're always a gentleman. You're always a very generous individual, and showing the credit there. Thanks very much. Ray, I think we'll pop it over for our next question, shall we?
Okay, thanks, Guy. We've got a question for Mattias now. So Mattias, you're running a kind of different kind of network, international wholesale network. To what extent does cloud native feature in your strategic planning in the discussions you have at Telia Carrier?
No, I think that's a good question. And of course, our network is a bit different than the national networks or the other networks, of course. And comparing us to the rest of Telia, it's also very different. But I think, cloud native is important for us as well. And I think actually the last couple of years, we have realized that it really needs to be cloud native. I think for a long period of time, we just liked the idea of being in the cloud. and we felt, whatever we can move into the cloud is great. But in reality, we just moved functionality we had on a server in the basement into the cloud, and we had the same functionality and didn't really win anything except for that, someone else fixed the server if it broke. I think we have the last couple of years really realized that we need to be cloud native with all the stuff we do. And therefore, we just decided early part of this year that some of the basic fundament system we have, we really need to do or really redo. One of them is the inventory system. That system completely needs to be done from scratch, up to par 2020 cloud native. We can't, take the old system, put it in the cloud, and hope for the best. So I would say this all applies for the carrier world as well. We need to be cloud native as well, and the more we can put into cloud as native cloud, the better.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's good to hear that this evolution, if you like, and this adoption of cloud native processes, methodologies, etc., is across the board. It's not just for regular national tier 1, tier 2 operators with fixed and mobile access networks. This covers the whole ecosystem of network operators. Okay, Guy, going to hand over to you now for the next question.
Great, thanks, Ray. This one's over to Ian, and it was an email I received a couple of hours ago referring to the NFE panel that Ian, you participated in. And we had one of those rare disagreements between speakers, not a full argument, just a slight difference of opinion. And you suggested that we do need to rethink our network investments and strategies in the cloud native era. Telcos need to adopt the new processes. We need to be agile, responsive, minimal viable products, etc. And this could even change our NFV components. I was just wondering if you could elaborate on that and just reiterate what you said and what this change really means for telcos.
Yeah, and I think following on, I think from what Mattias said there as well, when we think about cloud native, it's not simply a case of taking what you already had and putting it in the cloud. It's a new way of thinking about things. And particularly when I look at how cloud native has worked in IT, it started off by thinking about, right, we've got these monolithic components, we will virtualize them and then we'll put them in public cloud or private cloud. Increasingly, we're now moving to a situation where you actually have to rethink the application. It's no longer a monolithic application. You need to think about the components within that application and what they do. And it's really getting these, not just putting things in the cloud, but getting loose coupling, exposing the functionality so it can be reused in different places. When you take that same thinking into NFV and networks, I think the same change is going to be required. It's not really just a case of taking what were physical network functions and turning them into virtualized network functions and then putting those virtualized network functions in the cloud. It actually, I think, will become a change to what are the network components, and will we actually change that? And I think what we're going to have to see is a cultural change. I think for many, many decades, we've had IT organizations, we've had network organizations, and they haven't always mixed very well. And I think what we need to do is we need to get them mixing. We need to get a lot of the skills and thinking of IT architects and designers working with the skills and thinking of network architects and designers and moving forward. But I think to truly go cloud native for NFV, I think there's a big cultural shift required there, which will actually involve changing what the network components are, which go into the cloud. I don't think we'll get there overnight. I don't think this is a case of throw everything away and start again. But I do think there will be an evolution towards that. And I think, yes, you need to continue to benefit from what you've invested in. But I think looking forward, I think new investments will increasingly move to perhaps a new breed of network components rather than simply virtualized components, which we did have as physical components in the past.
Thank you very much, Ian. And I know we've got more tomorrow, in fact, on the Cloud Native Telco Summit that we're focusing on the cultural changes that you mentioned. Ray.
Yeah, so Misbah, thanks very much for your patience. We've got a question for you now. And you must be talking to a lot of network operators, finding out their experiences, what they're planning on doing in adopting cloud native methodologies. What would you say is the biggest challenge, the hardest part for telcos as they move towards being adopting cloud native?
Yeah, I think I'll echo a lot of what Ian just mentioned as well, which is the overall concept of going to virtualization and moving to cloud native really brings on a few capabilities or a few benefits, which really focus around agility. How quickly can I turn up a new service? How quickly can I scale up, scale down different services and so forth, and be more of a competitive operator in the market. Now, the challenges do come around, which is there is the technology challenge and moving, as we went from physical infrastructure and then we moved over to NFV, it was still a very vertical stack, right? And I think, they didn't have a lot of those efficiencies that operators wanted to come out with from a cloud-based architecture. And so I think that's one aspect that's a big challenge. Second of all is the personnel and the cultural change challenge. And IT operations and at VMware, we have been seeing this with IT organizations and enterprises for the past 10, 15 years, which is that they are one of the first ones to adapt new technologies, and they are able to realize some of the benefits of moving to virtualization, of moving to cloud native architectures. Now, the challenge is going to be what is going to happen with the network operations team, and can they work together and come up with a solution or a network architecture that really does allow to have compute across both network and IT, and really not even focus on what compute resources I need. That should be an irrelevant point. The question should be, I need to stand up a 5G core. I need to stand up an edge-based solution, and I should just have the compute, the networking resources available to me as I need them. And if you can have that type of model, which I think they will get to with a cloud-native architecture, then you really start to see the dynamic ability of operators to really be more competitive and be really more efficient, increasing revenues as well as increasing their operational efficiencies.
Okay, so it sounds like it's going to be the challenge of just working and operating in a different way, which of course is something that we're definitely hearing from the operators as well in terms of what they think is the biggest challenge for them. Okay, Guy. So over to you.
Thanks, Ray. Well, we've heard from each of our guests now, and we've managed to divide up the initial set of questions rather nicely, I think. Before we continue, though, we ought to mention the poll that we're running on the site. It's right there next to the question form. It's nice and simple. It's not difficult. It's only one choice required here. And we're asking the question, do telcos need to add cloud-native methodologies and practices right now, or can they wait? And we have 4 choices for you, so please take a couple of seconds to click the relevant button, and we'll take a look at the results at the end of this session. Although if I glance across to my right, I can see the results as they're coming in. I won't say anything yet. I'll leave it another 10 minutes or so, keep you all in suspense. That's the poll, but back to the questions, and do keep the questions coming, of course. Ray, anything new coming in on our question front?
Yes, so actually we've got a question here from Vance Shipley. He's the CEO at SigScale, and he's got a question here. How important is it to have converged information models for cloud native functions, virtual network functions, and mobile edge computing, or edge computing in general, I guess? Do we need to manage and assure cloud native functions with different methods and systems than NFV? I know that information models has been a topic of discussion within the NFV community over the years. So maybe I could start with Diego on this one. Is this a question you can take on?
I think so. I mean, when it comes to have, when we're talking about information models are essential for supporting abstractions, This is something that, whatever the nature of the network function, we should have a set of consistent information models. And I would even include the physical network functions as long as they support a certain reasonable model or modern model for management. So for sure, having, I mean, probably is not, the important thing is not having the same information model, but having information models that are compatible and they are not that are not conflicting to each other, so they can be incorporated in any mechanism that we use for automation and management. That implies that, for example, for sure, if you're dealing with a physical network function, you cannot do a live update of the function, and for sure you can, or you cannot do a live scale up of the function. But for sure you can manage certain parameters in the in that function that probably you would do in a different fashion than you can do for a cloud native one. But the important thing is that you have the parameters, the characteristics that you can change and control in a consistent way. So whenever you need to make a change, people that are using the functions, the people that are maintaining the function, the people that are controlling the functions, they can use it consistently. This is something we have used several times as an example. Is that it's the same way that when you virtualize through the operating systems, through the different applications you're running on them, you virtualize precisely the equipment on a computer, and people. We are all used to that. For example, the sound system doesn't matter whether you're using loudspeakers, whether you're using the internal mic, whether you're using a Bluetooth connection, whatever. You are using the same paradigm for volume, for adjusting, for balance, etc. So it's going the same way in the case of networking. And let me say this level of abstraction requires a common information models.
Okay. Yeah, well, it certainly sounds like it's important and desirable, but of course, whether it's possible to bring all the different groups together to agree on a common information model, I know is a debate that's been going on for a number of years. So a great question there from Vance. Thanks very much. Guy, I think we got a question for Nathan as well.
Yeah, we do. Thanks, Ray. It links in with our poll question, really. Nathan, you've got a unique perspective on this. You spent a lot of time prior to Deutsche Telekom at Canonical. The question is, do you think telcos in general are ready and prepared to embrace cloud-native methodologies?
I think they want to, but I think as some of the other guests have highlighted, the organizational change, the people and processes change is really kind of the big challenge to get people in the operators to actually embrace the cloud native type changes. So I think that yes, it's possible. It is going to take some effort, and it's not going to be just a technology change. It's not just that we can come in one day and say, look, we've installed a cloud native network function and it works. We have to have a change of the people and processes in the organization to make it possible. And I think that's actually the more difficult part, more so than the technology change that is coming from it.
Thanks, Nathan. Yes, yeah, quite right. Anybody else want to weigh in on the question about whether telcos, are ready and prepared to embrace cloud native? Matthias, I think I see you there.
No. I really agree with Nathan, but I also think the problem those have really is that you have this business as usual that goes on all the time around you, and that's the trick. If we could all hold this right now and start building it the way we want, that would be great. But the problem is, tomorrow we need to deliver the same thing we delivered today, and at the same time switch out all the engines and parts. That's the difficult thing. I've seen so many great projects here, but people are through the project. People are sent back to working in the old ways because we can't need to deliver there. And I think that's the biggest struggle we have. Building while you're still selling.
Yeah, that's great insight.
I would agree with that. And
Misbah.
I think, one of the strategies that we had or that we're seeing with a lot of the telcos is exactly that, which is they are looking at the new services, potentially at the edge or some other things, virtualizing the radio access network, for example, and maybe potentially using that as kind of the modeling ground for cloud native architectures. And then, as Matthias mentioned, it is going to take some time to evolve over, right? They made that investment from physical to NFV, and it's a lot of processes, a lot of infrastructure already in place. And so you need to basically ensure that you're able to recoup that investment. But yeah, there's definitely opportunities. Not everyone is a Dish or a Rakuten where they can start off from a greenfield, and they're doing that very well. But I do think if the operator looks at what new areas they can focus in on and start those as cloud native, it gives them a good learning ground. And just this morning, I was reading. I think it was Deutsche Telekom just announced that they are finally going to sunset their 3G networks. And if you think about how long that's been in the networks, it's happening now, right? So it's going to be the same thing with a lot of the other network investments that telcos have invested in.
Thanks, Misbah. Ray, anything else popping through the web channels?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, just that conversation was just happening there. I think it's definitely possible, because I remember a couple of years ago at a TM Forum event, the former CIO of Telefónica talking about how the entire BSS system for Telefónica was changed while obviously the operator was still running. And he described it, and I think we've all heard this analogy over the years, of changing the tires while you're still driving the car. And I think that's what the telcos are facing right now. So actually, Ian, I'm wondering, this is a question from myself, at the TM Forum, how much discussion is there around this adoption and this move towards cloud native amongst the members of the TM Forum, which of course, a lot of the members there are the operators, and a lot of this basically is down to software, which is the heart of the TM Forum's heritage.
Yeah, I'm going to answer follow on from the previous question a little bit before I answer that. I think Vance's question about the data is very, very tied into what we're talking about here when it comes to how you can do this, and it came up in the panel discussion as well. It's very, very difficult to do these things big bang. Unless you have a greenfield site, you have to do it bit by bit. And having an information model which allows you to understand which parts of your estate you're transforming, and by transforming I mean going to a cloud native approach, not just in terms of the technology but in terms of the culture, is really, really helpful. So I think that's how you do it. In terms of your follow-on question about the members of TM Forum, yeah, it definitely is a topic which we're working together on all the time. One of the challenges we have, particularly when we talk about our open digital architecture within TM Forum, is understanding the target of where you want to get to. Defining that is hard work, and our members work very hard, and we've got a really good open digital architecture defined. But actually the even harder job is, what is my transition to get there? And there is quite a lot of work going on as well, thinking, right, what are the various techniques, what are the transition architectures we can use, so that you can actually change the wheels on the car while you're still driving, or change the engines on the airplane while you're in flight, whatever analogy you want to use. So there is work going on in that, and there's a number of published papers looking at the various transition methods. There isn't one size fits all. It really depends on the service provider, what their priorities are, how much legacy they've got, what their drivers for change are, how quickly they can do it. But there's various different techniques available.
Absolutely. And I think the last time I had a conversation with the TM Forum, the CIO of Orange was involved, and he basically said you either go cloud native or you go out of business. So I think he was suggesting you just need to find the right way to do it. Guy, back over to you. Thanks,
Ray. Well, I've got a question of my own as well, and it's for Misbah. We know that cloud native methodologies are being developed and have been developed by contributions from a whole range of different verticals and enterprises. It's not just telco by any means. However, as a business vertical in its own right, telcos must have their own unique requirements and objectives. What would you say they are, Misbah?
I think from what are their specific objectives and requirements, obviously being able to have a platform that allows them to run multiple different applications on a platform. As we moved, even when we went from physical to NFV, and we talked about this, which is everyone was still in a siloed infrastructure. You still, brought a PCRF or a MME gateway or a packet gateway, and it was still very siloed, even though it was running, it was virtualized. So I think some of the objectives and some of the challenges they're going to have is, can they have a common horizontal platform that allows them now to run multiple applications? And then another key area that I think is very critical is the operations. Once you have kind of the day zero, which is you've installed the equipment, you've installed the infrastructure, what about day one and day two operations in terms of being able to scale up, scale down, heal services? And that's where things around orchestration become very critical too. Being able to have this complete end-to-end visibility and have your network completely automated, where you can then orchestrate different solutions, different networks across your entire infrastructure. Those are going to be some of the key challenges. And I think, from a telco perspective, they really need to evaluate their partners and see, who can actually provide that common platform that allows them to onboard new services, that gives them the automation capabilities to instantiate new services across multiple clouds. Because obviously we're now, we're not just in the core network. Now we're out in the edge. We want to move some workloads onto the public cloud. So we want to be able to have that orchestration capabilities, and then also have that operational visibility across their entire network too. So they understand exactly where there may be issues, or if there is an issue, they can quickly identify those problems, find the root cause analysis, and provide remediation. And again, it has to be across the entire network infrastructure. So there are definitely challenges, but I think there are a lot of partners, a lot of vendors out there that are working very closely, including VMware, working very closely to understand exactly what those challenges are for the operators, and being able to realize and understand those challenges, take it internally, and come up with the proper solution. So I think, like I said, I think eventually we will get there, and the industry is moving very fast. It seems to be on a daily basis. We are hearing more and more new innovation coming across the entire industry. And I think from the telco's perspective, it's their time to really embrace these new technologies, and to really be that telco, that operator of choice for their subscribers.
Yes, and also we want telcos to convey their requirements back into those cloud native communities as well, so they're not overlooked or having to basically work with processes and methodologies that aren't optimized for them. Thanks very much for that. Ray, any more questions coming in?
Yes, one for Mattias. So your customers are communication service providers, large enterprises, and they're all going through a sort of a cloud-based transformation. How is that impacting what they need from you, if at all? I mean, are you seeing the impact of their cloud native and virtualization strategies sort of coming back to you in their requests and desires?
Absolutely, yeah. I think partly they're still buying the same services, but I see there's a lot more requests now for using cloud services. And of course, one good way of using public cloud is turning to your service provider who can take you to the various clouds they need. So I would say the number of requests we have for Cloud Connect right now is, of course, much higher now than it was before. And I would even say that the COVID-19 piece has actually increased that need, because people are now in dire need of being even more automated because you don't want to be stuck with the service provider that can't upgrade their network and so on. So I would say, absolutely, we've seen a big change in the way they ask us for services. And when enterprises needs more cloud services, that of course is perfect for a carrier like us to deal with that. So yeah, absolutely, we've seen much more requests.
Okay, great. And we've had another question in, Guy, I think from the audience, a question specifically for Diego. Is that right?
Yes, we do. We've had one in from looks like it's Jose Maria Benito at Radcom, and it is specifically for Diego, and I'll read the question out. Diego, could you elaborate a bit about the recently signed MOU between Telefónica and Rakuten, and how feasible is a possibility that Telefónica adopts Rakuten's mobile platform for its OBs?
Well, the agreement is about consolidating and bringing into reality Open RAN, and this is something that for us is key. I mean, we believe that one of the aspects that is more important when you try to virtualize is precisely the capability of virtualizing to a great capillarity of the network, the access networks. The access network components, the RAN components, etc., is where we can take higher advantage of automation, of cost reduction, scalability, etc. And for sure, RAN is the for us is I would say is the paradigm of something that we are trying to foster, that this idea of ecosystems in which you have, on the one hand, you have standards, but at the same time you have implementations, and you have a group of collaborating operators, vendors, even researchers that are working all together in a way that is not just separated as in the past, that you have the researchers that bring with the results to the standardization that go with the specs to the vendors that come to the operators with their offerings, but it's something that is a little bit more dynamic and where interaction is more agile. With this in mind, this is precisely the idea is to sign or to sign this MOU with Rakuten is precisely to foster this RAN ecosystem. Whether we are going to take the exact mobile platform from Rakuten, or we are going to adapt it, or we are going to share with them knowledge and take their ideas and transform it in our own platform, is something that remains to be seen. Is something that will be part of this dynamic ecosystem interaction with them. And with others, for sure.
Well, thank you very much for that, Diego. Appreciate your comments there. Before we wrap things up, because I'm looking at the clock and I'm realizing we've just slightly gone past our 30 minutes, we ought to take a look at how the poll is coming along. And we asked you if telcos need to add cloud native methodologies and practices right now, or can they wait? The results so far, I'm going to keep this poll open, but the results so far, about half of respondents are saying, if I look across at the poll here, within the next 6 to 12 months is the optimal period. But what is then interesting is the remainder of views are split, and it's quite an even split at the moment between you need to do it right now, otherwise it's too late, or you can wait till about 2022. There's no need to panic just yet. Ray, what do you make of those initial results?
I guess not a great surprise. I'm just wondering why waiting 6 to 12 months might be an optimal time frame. And the way things are progressing right now, 2022 sounds like an awful long way off. Look at all the developments that are going on between operators and the hyperscalers, and the developments, in fact, the hyperscalers are making themselves. I think kind of, waiting 2 years might be like waiting for 20 years if you sort of, went back a few years. So the timescales for change in this industry seems incredibly short. Maybe we can open up to the panel and see if anybody else thinks that, the telco should strike while the iron's hot and get on it right now.
Was yesterday a choice? That's what I would have. That's what I would have voted for.
Yeah, I think the when I look at the way that you've described the results there, it almost sounds as though I would interpret that to say people do not know. When you run a poll like this and you get a very, a nice spike, then that shows that there's consensus. I think what we're really seeing here is there's still some confusion in those people who are answering that poll, and that's why some of them are saying, "Oh, we can wait because we don't know what it is yet." Certainly, from my point of view, I would have been coming for the "No, you need to act now." I think digital transformation is something that you either do it or you go home. It's an essential. It's not an optional at this stage.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's happening right now. For operators, for them to embrace 5G, for them to really be innovation leaders, they need to have cloud native principles and technologies. Strike when the fire's hot, I think is the right terminology there. And as our CEO Pat Gelsinger says, there's two options of success for operators for 5G. One is if you virtualize, and then the other one is if you don't do anything, right? And so for them, the success is really around virtualization, cloudification of their networks. It's paramount.
Well, I think what we ought to do now is I need to go away and doctor this poll to put in another line that says, if you're even thinking about answering this poll, it's too late.
That's right.
That might appease Nathan on that. Yeah. Well, look, we're going to keep this poll open for the whole week. So please, if you haven't voted yet, vote now or vote yesterday. But that's pretty much all we have time for today. A big thank you to all our guests and to all of you for watching the program. Thanks for sending in your questions, and do keep them coming, and we'll use them for our next Q&A session. Speaking of which, we'll be back tomorrow for our next live Q&A program, and 5 new guests will be joining us then. Our theme for tomorrow is how to operationalize cloud native with a focus on people and processes. We'll have 2 new panel discussions for you, and we will then pick up the themes and explore them further during the Q&A session. And that's at 4:30 p.m. UK time. That's all the time we have today, though. Thank you very much for joining us, and we do hope to see you again tomorrow. For now, thank you and goodbye.